Once again, welcome to the Regional Virtual Research Conference with the theme Strengthening Excellence in Educational Research Amidst the Pandemic and Amidst the Technical Glitches. To introduce us to our keynote speaker, may we call in the Education Program Supervisor, Dr. Ana Belen S. Moring of the Policy Planning and Research Division.
Thank you, Miss Mary. Good morning, everyone. Our keynote speaker is a fellow of the AIM Team Energy Bridging Leaders Fellowship Program, Asian Institute of Management from 2007 to 2009. He earned academic units in PhD and Business Administration at Wesleyan University, Philippines from 2011 to present. A Master in Business Administration of Ateneo Graduate School of Business at Rockwell Campus from 2001 to 2003. An MA Urban and Regional Planning with thesis, School of Urban and Regional Planning of UP Diliman from 1993 to 1997. Prior to his present position, he was a Director 4 of DepEd-NCR from September 16, 2019 to March 23, 2021. He has the following eligibilities: Career Executive Service Officer, Career Service Executive Eligibility, Superintendent's Eligibility, Civil Service Professional Eligibility. He is an awardee of Natatanging Anak ang Dukha ng Kabanatuan noong ika-53 pagdiriwang ng Araw ng Kabanatuan, Gabi ng Parangal, February 3, 2011 at Cabanatuan City. A distinguished educator of UP College of Education. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, our keynote speaker, the OIC Assistant Secretary for National Academy of Sports and Field Operations. Please help me welcome Dr. Malcolm Santos Garma. A virtual applause for him, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Ana. Is my audio clear? Am I being heard?
Yes,
Yes.
Asek.
Yes,
Okay, thank you. I know we are suffering from technical glitches, no? Since this morning. I hope that I'm coming through my audio and my file. And I would like to, on the onset, I would like to thank RD Art, no, for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to share with you in this very special occasion of CDO of DepEd CDO Region 10, no, and hopefully I can impart, no, some contribution to the efforts and initiatives of DepEd Region 10 insofar as research is concerned. But instead of the usual reading of a keynote message, I want to be part of this program in terms of contributing my insights, and hopefully this is something that can be reflected on by our researchers and consider some of these points for possible inclusion in the research agenda of DepEd Region 10. So at this point, may I request the technical team or the secretariat to, if I may share my screen, my presentation on screen.
Yes, Asek. We shall now be sharing your screen right now. Okay. Is it okay, Asek, that you'll be the one to share the screen from your end?
Yes. Yeah, ako na lang.
Thank you po.
Okay. Is my presentation on screen now?
Yes, Asek, kindly present it as slide view.
Yeah, okay, I will.
Thank you po.
Okay na?
Okay na po.
For a while, ha? Okay. Before I start, audio check, please. Is my audio clear at this point?
Clear
Yes,
as
Asek. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So again, let me share with you some of the insights that I have gained and some of the lessons or learning uh, that I have gotten throughout the implementation of the BELCP amidst the pandemic. If you remember, when the COVID-19, when we had our first community transmission of the COVID-19 last year, no, that was March. At that time, I was the regional director of the National Capital Region, and we all remember that the first region uh, that was locked down at that time was the National Capital Region, even before we end the school year. So I think that was March when we started closing down the schools. And at the time, the challenge was the how are we going to end, no, the school year, because at that time we are not yet done with our fourth grading period, and of course we the usual end of year activities, no, that we usually have. This is one reality that we have to accept, that education landscape has changed. But again, I don't know if you have heard this, no? Kanina, before I got cut off, uh, I, I don't know if you will agree with me that this change in the landscape is something that is positive in terms of education, no? Because the pandemic has given us the opportunity to think and to look at education in a different way. And this perspective that I'm sharing with you and the insights that I have gained as a regional director of the National Capital Region during the onset of the pandemic, hopefully would help and would contribute to the research agenda of DepEd-Region 10. So I know you have already done your researches. This forum will just be an opportunity for the researchers to present their research. But I hope that the research will continue on and consider all the learnings that we have gained insofar as the education continuity is concerned amidst the pandemic. So I think this is where research would really come into significance. No, there are a lot of things to find out. There are a lot of things to validate. There are a lot of things need to be experimented on, and to be for us to be able to establish really that new landscape in education. So in what we are doing now is basically what we call as remote learning. So in terms of in the definition of terms, nagkaroon din tayo, no, ng mga pagbabago as we define terms, no, that we usually use in our in the education sector. So for example, remote learning before, we do the remote learning during times of calamities or displacement of learners. Where our learners stay at home and use the modules. But I think what is different now is that the remote learning that we are doing will persist for a longer period of time, considering that we have not yet really addressed the COVID transmission, especially with the prevalence and existence of new variants, and we have not yet reached the right threshold for the vaccination. And with the announcement of the president that the face-to-face, as we term it now, but what we term it as school-based before, or the classroom-based learning before. So without the vaccine, the face-to-face will not happen unless our learners would have been vaccinated, especially with the onset of the Delta variant. So this is something that we have to accept now, and this is where the innovations would really come in. But before we can really take on these innovations, we need to establish our learning, and this is where I think I'm going to share with you my insights. So there are three key points or three key areas that we would like to look into in terms of the remote learning or distance learning that we are doing. So one is that in the absence of classroom-based, what we're doing now is the home-based learning program that relies heavily on the use of modules. Okay, so yon, alam nating lahat yon. No? So again, we are using or we are adopting or implementing in the remote learning or distance learning, the home-based learning program. And together with this, we introduce the blended learning. Before, we say blended learning as a combination of school-based and online, or home-based. But now we use the blended learning as a combination of the different platforms that we use under the home-based learning program. So yun siguro yung distinction, and the difference between what we're doing now and what we used to do in terms of the alternative delivery mode that we had, especially during times of displacement. So the first key important thing that we have to really consider is that we are doing this home-based learning program that relies heavily on modules. And when we say modules, hindi naman masama yung module. Okay. When we say module, it's something that we use as a kit or as a tool or as an instrument for learning delivery. And the modules may come in different forms. So it may come in the form of printed materials, or it may come in the form of digital content. So naging ano lang, naging byword na lang na module. So ayoko ng module, hindi namin gusto ang module, mas gusto namin ang module. So it becomes a byword. But module, as it is the instrument that we use for learning delivery. Okay, so but I think what is more important than the form is the content of the module. So I think that is where we really have to focus into the way we produce the content of the module. So personally, what I think is that, okay, one is that we rely on teachers, we rely on our experts to write the content of the module. So ito yung naging practice natin for this school year. In the absence of CO-driven content modules or content of modules. So teachers were asked, were requested to become writers. But the problem is the teachers who are writing the modules, I think, personally, is that they write the modules in a perspective like they are teaching inside the classroom. So, ibig sabihin, kung ano yung tinuturo ko or paano ako magturo sa classroom, yun din yung laman ng module. So, I think this is the reason why modules become lengthy, mahaba, at saka mahirap i-contextualize. Bakit? Because kung ang perspective ng guro sa pagsulat ng module ay yung classroom, mahirap i-contextualize ito pagdating ng bata sa kani-kanilang mga tahanan. Because we remember that the classroom is a controlled learning environment. So, sabi nga nila, the classroom is the greatest equalizer of learning environment. So, even if you come from a marginalized family, marginalized sector, or coming from a well-off family, pagdating ninyo sa classroom, iisa lang yung learning environment nyo. But now that our learners are staying at home, then our learners have different kind of learning environments. So learning now becomes a function of opportunity for learning. So yung batang may lamesa na pwede niyang pagsulatan, pwede niyang paglagyan ng gamit, ay mas lamang kaysa doon sa batang nakatira sa kalsada o nakatira sa ilalim ng tulay o nakatira kung saan man na walang ganitong mga gamit. So this is one of the things that we have to consider, that when we write the content of the module, we come up with the content of the module, so it should be sensitive to the learning environment of our children. Mahirap because it's really there are so many things to consider. We have to consider religion, we have to consider the gender, you have to consider the economic status. Okay, you have to consider the political climate, the political situation where our learners are. So it's really difficult to to combine all of this consideration and come up with a very comprehensive module. And again, another thing that we have to consider insofar as the modules are concerned, and this, when I say the modules, the printed modules, okay, is that they are lengthy, mahaba, So with the kind of schedules our learners have in their homes now, akala natin mas maraming oras ang mga bata ngayon sa pag-aaral, but we have learned as we get feedback from the learners and from the parents, mas umikli yung oras na ginugugol ng mga bata sa kanilang pag-aaral. Because they get to be distracted by other things, other than studying. So unlike when they were in the classroom, so specific, very particular yung time. So this is the time for studying, this is the time for playing, and there's a time for extracurricular activities. So we have to combine all of this to be able to come up with a very relevant, comprehensive content of modules. Again, when we say modules, it may be in different forms, but well, as of now, we rely heavily on the printed modules. But then again, the reliance on printed materials would really have a disadvantage in the long run. One is that it's in terms of cost effectiveness, it's not cost effective. These are consumables, and as the secretary would always say, that we have to cut down so many trees for this to be transformed, as raw materials for paper. The demand for paper in our country has tremendously increased because of DepEd. And in economics, the law of supply and demand. So habang tumataas ang demand mo at lumiliit yung supply mo, tumataas din yung presyo mo. So cost-effective wise, it's not being cost-effective. So there is now the move, and we have to move towards the direction of gradually shifting. Nawala yung presentation ko. Or anybody? Nawala ba yung presentation?
It's on the screen po, on
Okay.
Insights.
Sige. Kaya lang ako hindi ko nakikita. Bakit ganun? Okay. So, we need to really slowly or gradually shift from the use of printed to a more digital platform. Hindi naman kailangan online. We can probably start looking into the offline learning platform, no? So and I think some of the regions, including Region 10, is already doing this, no? The use of OTG, the use of USB, the use of uploaded materials, no, in either phones or laptops or other gadgets, no. But then again, part of my personal advocacy also is that let's lessen, start lessening the use of papers. And the third key point that we need to look into in so far as remote learning is concerned is cyber wellness and security. So we need to beef up, we need to strengthen our cybersecurity platforms or measures, no? There is a lot of stories or reports that concern cyberbullying, no? And this, would on top of the mental stress that our learners and also our teachers are suffering, no? Because of the COVID-19, nakakadagdag pa ito sa kanilang mga mental stresses, mental and emotional stresses. So with all of this, the three key result or the key points that that are the anchor of my insights, no, on what we have learned, what we have experienced for the school year insofar as the implementation of the BNCP is concerned. So for me, importante ngayon, no, that we need to emphasize on several things, no. So I think one of the things that we have to consider is that independent learning is necessary to succeed in this remote learning or modular approach. So we've been hearing of independent learning. Ano ba itong independent learning? For me, this is one thing that I think, personally, is something that we have neglected, in the education sector. Bakit na neglect ito? Because again, if we go back to that premise that traditionally we do the learning delivery in the classroom, we tend to, as teachers, we tend to spoon feed, our learners of information, or even in the way we deliver instruction, masyadong teacher dependent, and I think most of us grew up, in this kind of a learning setup, so even as adults, and as parents, probably we were not trained so much, on independent learning. Kaya siguro many parents now would not have that confidence, that their children can learn independently. So there's a tendency for parents to be engaged too much, in the learning process. So before, sabi ng mga magulang, okay lang, no? Hindi ko na masyadong titignan yung anak ko sa kanyang pag-aaral. Anyway, nasa school naman siya, no? Siguro nandun pa rin sa atin, no, yung loco parentis principle, no? The teachers being the second parents or parent of their children. So okay lang, sige, hayaan mo na si teacher ang magsubaybay do sa kanyang pag-aaral. Okay. So, but now that their children are at home, wala na si teacher. So nawala si teacher doon sa picture, and the parents now become the substitute teachers. Okay. And probably we have to develop that confidence among the parents, that the children can do it, that their children can learn independently. It may not be of the same style that they learn. No? It may be of different style. So siguro dito papasok yung mga research natin, no, on the motivation of learners. Ano bang motivation ng learners ngayon? So you see our children, you see our learners that, while they are learning, while they're doing their modules, they're watching TV, watching Netflix, or they're playing, they're eating. So well, in the context of multiple tasking, no, multitasking, so capable yung mga bata sa ganun. But I think what we need to really find out, and this can again be a subject of research, one is the motivation of learners. How can they learn independently, or how they would like to learn? And second, are they really learning? Natututo ba sila? But that is again another that question of are they learning is something that we also have to ask ourselves, no, as educators, as adults. Well, how do we define learning now? Is learning something that we define as what we would like them to learn? No? Ito kasi natutunan ko. So kailangan matutunan mo din ito. Again, one of the personal insight that I have gained is that I think we started the BALCP with the definition of the most essential learning competencies. And you know that main identification of the most essential learning competency is done by us. So tayo ang nagsabi, ito yung kailangan matutunan ng mga bata ngayon during the pandemic. Okay. But I guess what we also would like to ask is that ano bang gusto nilang matutunan? What our children would like to learn? And again, no, going back to the most essential learning competency, na kung ito yung dapat nilang matutunan, ito yung dapat ituro. And that now becomes the basis of the content of the module. So going back to what I'm saying, that the module is basically how the teachers would teach inside the classroom. Okay? So even the content, parang ito kasi yung competency na kailangan nilang matutunan, so dapat ganito yung pagtuturo ko. Ganito ko dapat ituro. So this now becomes a subject for validation, no? Would it help in the learning process if we ask our learners what they would like to learn? No? Why? Because we also need to find out their interest, no? Yung motivation for learning. So this is something that probably would help us in really defining ano ba talaga yung competency na dapat nating. And also, we have started with the identification of the most essential learning competency, but I don't know if we failed to identify the learning outcome. No? How do we connect now the learning outcome, the desired learning outcome, with that of the learning competency? So anong ibig sabihin nun? Kailangan magkaduktong yon. If you remember, during the time of, I don't know, RDR, if you still remember, no, sila Director Andrada noon, we were introduced to the UBD, no, understanding by design. So start with the end in mind. So when we say start with the end in mind, ano ba yung dulo? Then balikan mo. Paano mo kukunin yung dulo na yon? So I think what the end in mind is the learning outcome. Ano ba yung gusto natin na, o ano bang dapat matutunan ng mga bata sa panahon ng pandemya? So for me, my personal insight on this is that, you know, we need to teach our children to be prepared, prepared in life, and to be prepared for the next pandemics that will happen. This is not the last pandemic that will happen to us. Believe you me, hindi ito ang huli. COVID-19 will not be the last. And I think we owe it to our children to teach them how to survive, how to adapt, and how to become resilient. If this will be your desired learning outcome, then anong competency ang pwede mong gamitin para maituro ito sa mga bata? And I think what is more important than or going beyond the identification of the competency is that how are you going to measure this? So this is where assessment would come in. Okay? So kailangan, before we look at the content, ano ba yung laman ng ituturo mo? Kailangan alamin mo muna paano mo susukatin. Because what you can only measure should be the one that you can teach, no? So kasi ang usual natin is that kung ano yung tinuro ko, yun yung susukatin ko. Pero most of the time, hindi natin nakikita yung effectiveness nung tinuturo, no, doon sa learning process. And only to find out at the end, no, it may be already the summative, no, the summative test. Doon mo pala nakita, ay hindi pala effective yung tinuro ko. Okay. So, ano ba yung kaya mong sukatin? Okay. Kung ito lang yung kaya kong sukatin, then I think this is what I'm going to teach. And that now makes your module more comprehensive, more relevant. So, duktong yun, no? What the end in mind, the learning outcome, which is about survivability, resiliency, adaptability of our learners, for them to be prepared to the challenges of the future. And then, if this is the desired learning outcome, anong competency ang ituturo ko? And though, based on this competency, how am I going to measure it? Ano ang kaya kong sukatin? Ano bang kaya kong i-assess? Then, if these are the things that I can assess, then this is what I will teach. So, ganon yung nakikita kong proseso. So, duktong-duktong ito, no? Independent learning is important because the learning will happen within the self of the learner. So, but for us, educators, we need to find that motivation. Ano bang motivation nila to learn? And again, I would like to reiterate that question. Ano bang gusto nilang matutunan? So probably this is something that we can, you know, try to find out among our learners. So we've been asking ourselves for so long insofar as the innovation in education, the learning delivery, blah, blah, blah. But how many of us, no, are children? Huwag na tayong sa mga anak natin. And you will be surprised that most of the things that they would like to do, no? So they are trying to look of learning what they would like to learn. Okay? But of course, in all of this, assessment is important because assessment will provide us with the standards. So when we say learning outcome, hindi lang naman yung tatlo, no? Importante rin that part of the learning outcome is completion. Meaning they are able to complete what is required of them to complete. So if they are in grade 1, okay, They should be able to be in grade 2, to be in grade 3, and so on and so forth. Okay, so and lastly, learning structure is important. This is what we are missing right now in these times, no? Yung structure. Again, as I have said, the classroom is a constant variable in terms of learning environment. So kudrado lang yan. 7x9 with blackboard, with armchairs and everything. So again, mayaman ka, mahirap ka, pagpasok mo sa classroom, iisa lang ang learning environment nyo, controlled. But now that they are at their homes, in their communities, nawala yung controlled environment. And this is important for us to establish these law structures. Okay, and of course we cannot say that they can have the same learning environment. No, we cannot do that. The most is to proximate the learning environment. How? By making our modules or the content of the modules relevant to their environment. I'll give you a very specific example on how to equalize with regards to the content of the module. So if you remember, na yung mga bata na nasa kanya-kanyang mga bahay ay may iba-ibang kapasidad, no? So an example of a module that I have seen in the National Capital Region is I think it's in science, no? Subject of science, and I think the topic is sublimation, no? Properties of matter. So sublimation is the ability or property of matter from solid to gas, di ba? And you know, in terms of the module, meron tayong performance task, and part of the performance task I think is bumili ng car freshener, no? Bumili ng car freshener at obserbahan ang mangyayari sa car freshener after mong buksan ito. Well, definitely it will display that property of matter, which is sublimation. Mauubos talaga yon, from solid nawawala siya, giging gas. But how many of your learners are capable or can afford to buy a car freshener? Bakit ka bibili ng car freshener kung wala ka namang sasakyan? So this is a very an example na hindi contextualized, no, yung content ng module. So iba-iba ang sitwasyon ng mga bata. So in this case, how are you going to equalize that? So ano bang meron, no, sa isang normal average household that could display that property of matter? Of course, it may not be a car freshener. Naphthalene ball, baka pwede pa, no? Mura lang naman yon, baka pwedeng mabili or pwedeng mahingi o mahiram man lang, no, ng mga bata. Okay. And I think in that process of learning, this is where probably the parents would come in. So in the context of independent learning, hindi naman kailangan ipaliwanag ng magulang bakit nagiging o lumiliit yung naphthalene ball habang tumatagal, o yung bakit siya nawawala, nauubos, no? I think it's what the learner should find out. Okay. But the support or the parents engagement will come in the provision, no? And probably, you know, hindi naman kailangan ng magandang study table, no? Hindi naman kailangan naka-aircon. Ang importante lang for independent learning to foster inside the house is really for the parents to provide the conducive environment for learning. Malinis, maayos, masinop. At si parent nagpapaalala lang, no, doon sa anak niya about the structures that we have established. And I think one of the structures that we need to start with is the schedules to get our children back to their routines, to get our children, to our learners to get back to their normalcy. No? So kahit nasa bahay sila, may oras ang pag-aaral, may oras ang pagkain, may oras ang paglalaro, may oras ang pagpapahinga. So hindi pwedeng kanya-kanya. Kaya nga sinabi ko kanina, akala natin mas maraming oras ang mga bata sa pag-aaral, but actual observation tells us that no, it's the opposite, because we these structures, especially in terms of schedules. Okay. So lalagpasan ko na ito because I have already discussed this. So I think what is important now is that we are able to, one is to assess if learning is indeed happening. So this is something to do with learning loss, learning gain. But you have to have this certain forms of quality assuring and monitoring. So in the NCR, we have come up with this. We call this the Contextualized QAME, Quality Assurance and Monitoring and Evaluation Framework, wherein we have already included different key learning points that includes the learning outcome, the different key learning areas, the processes that are involved, and the kind of assessment that we will be doing. And I think more importantly, okay, is the inclusion of community and the home and learners context in our monitoring framework, in our quality assuring. So dati, when they were in the classroom, walang problema because controlled environment, we can easily monitor, we can quality assure, kumpleto ba yung gamit nila sa loob ng classroom, may ventilation ba and everything. But now, mahirap. So what is important now is really for us to go out, to go beyond, and really find out if the community itself, the home itself, the parents themselves are contributing to that learning process and making sure that learning happen. But then again, let's go back to that question. Are they learning? But how do we define the learning? Is it learning based from what learning is for us as adults? Or is it learning for them as the learners themselves or individuals? So, importante ito. Okay? So, well, when we have this framework, so for this to be translated into quantitative instrument or tool, we need to follow several steps, no? So ayan, nilagyan nilang title research-driven action because this is also in consonance with our research agenda in the National Capital Region. So these are the steps that we followed in terms of validating if this framework will really work, for us. So, well, I think the question right now for you as researchers, do you have other way of making sure that learning happens, or how are you going to measure this? So meron ka bang naiisip? And probably you don't have to really venture into wide-scale research. Pwede ito as action research lang ng isang teacher. No? Again, going back to that basic premise of research in terms of learning motivation or interest, and yung what our learners would like to learn and to become, no? Okay, so this is just the complete steps on the QAME finalization. So we have already translated this into survey forms, questionnaires, for that QAME framework to be validated. So hindi ko mapapakita sa inyo, maliliit yung sulat, but probably we can share this with you, kung ano ba yung laman ng questionnaires na yan. Okay? So I think that's all. I hope I was not cut off at any point in my presentation. So can I hear a feedback from, am I still okay? I'm still with you?
Thank you so much.
Yes, Asik.
Okay, so again, thank you RD Art for this opportunity, and I would like to congratulate Region 10, DepEd-Region 10 for this endeavor, this initiative of really highlighting research in so far as learning delivery is concerned. I think this is not only, the pandemic has not only given us the opportunity to innovate, but also the pandemic has given us the opportunity to highlight the importance of research. And there are so many things to find out and really learn from this. And let us all learn together. Okay, so again, thank you RD Art, thank you DepEd Region 10. Daghang salamat sa tanan.